السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Inshallah, today's reminder is with regards to the month of Sha'ban. The month of Sha'ban, and you might have heard a khutbah or a lesson already about the month of Sha'ban, but it's important to repeat these lectures and these talks because part of exalting and ta'zim of the awamir and the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to make ta'zim, is to exalt the times and the places that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exalted in the deen. And we get to know that by the nusus. We only know it because there's wahy. There is revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that mentions certain places, certain times. So therefore, we follow what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded us to do and to stay away from the bid'ah and the innovations of the deen. And this is the second point after making ta'zim what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded us to make ta'zim of is in any subject, in any matters of the deen, we have to know the Sunnah and we need to know the bid'ah to avoid it, especially when the bid'ah and the innovations of the deen are widespread. So, as important as knowing what the Sunnah is, to warn ourselves and to be away from the bid'ah or the innovations of the deen. And we need to develop in ourselves that we always go back to the foundation of the deen. Foundation meaning that whenever we listen to a lecture, whenever we learn something on the deen, is that from the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ? Is that referring to a wahy, revelation from Allah, or it's just people saying things, or what makes sense to them, or what makes them feel good? So, because the deen is nothing but a wahy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that is to be applied. Having said that, there is a few hadith where the month of Sha'ban is mentioned, and because it's the month that is right before Ramadan, and for every important matter, people are created in such a way that they have to prepare for it. And if they don't prepare for something important in their life till it comes, then they would lose so much in it. So if a person is a merchant, he has the most important month in his job, or an important guest that comes, and you want to make sure that you impress that guest, or you have to be generous with the guest. You don't wait till the guest come in and then you search what you got, but rather you prepare for the guest beforehand. And the same thing with one's business and things like this. And the most important thing is matter of deen. So as a way to prepare oneself for the month of Ramadan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded us to follow the way the Prophet ﷺ, especially with some of the things that are mentioned with regards to the month of Sha'ban. One of which is this famous hadith of Usama ibn Zayd radiallahu anhu, that he said, قلت يا رسول الله لم أرك تصوم شهرا من الشهور ما تصوم من شعبان. O Messenger of Allah, I never seen you fasting in a month more than you would fast in the month of Sha'ban. That means this is the most of all of the months of the year after Ramadan that the Prophet ﷺ would fast in. So the Prophet ﷺ replied by saying, ذلك شهر يغفل الناس عنه بين رجب ورمضان. This is a month that the people يغفل الناس عنه, that means they are forgetful, they're not paying attention to this month between Rajab and Ramadan. وهو شهر ترفع فيه الأعمال إلى رب العالمين, and it's a month that the deeds are presented, elevated to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Lord of the Alameen. فأحب أن يرفع عملي وأنا صائم. So I love for my deeds to be presented to Allah while I'm fasting. So as you see this hadith, there are 2 points here. The first one, this is a month يغفل الناس عنه. This is a month that people are overlooking, forgetting. Why? Because it's between two great months. Rajab, which is Muharram, a month that is sacred. The good deeds are multiplied and the bad deeds are multiplied. And Ramadan, which is the greatest month of all, that everyone anticipates and everybody's waiting for. So then Sha'ban becomes in the middle, in which people are preparing for Ramadan, maybe working harder in Sha'ban so that they take vacation in Ramadan. Maybe they'll do something. Some people even they would go for vacations, or They eat as much as they can, thinking that let's eat so much and everything that we desire before the month of Ramadan, and we fast. All kinds of things like this. Or a month that people don't pay attention to as far as its virtue and its rewards. So that's why the Prophet ﷺ would fast in it more than any other month. Because the ibadah, the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the times or the places of ghafla is an act of virtue, and the rewards are multiplied as a result of this. So even when it's time of ghafla, people are forgetful of the deen, turning away from the deen. Those who would hold fast to the deen at these times, their rewards are much more multiplied. As the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, when he talked about a time would come into this ummah, al-qabidu fi ala dini kal-qabidi ala jamratin min nar. That a time would come, the one that hold fast to the religion is like someone holding fast to a hot coal of fire. And he said عليه الصلاة والسلام that أجر واحد منهم كخمسين منكم. The reward of one of them is equal to 50 of among you, meaning the companions رضي الله عنهم. And he said عليه الصلاة والسلام the reason why is إنكم تجدون على أعوانا على الخير. You find helpers to help you to do good, but they don't. And when someone doesn't find himself having lots of helpers to help him to do good deeds, it becomes more difficult for the person, because the human beings are acquainted, or they have this al-uns, is to feel acquainted with others. You find more energetic when you're among people, those who are energetic. You find yourself more into the ibadah when people around you are making ibadah, and so on. So when a person finds himself alone, no one likes to be an outcast or someone that is a stranger among the people. But knowing the haqq from the batil, knowing the truth from falsehood, then makes the believers, they hold fast to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded, and that becomes multiplication and reward. And this is really a special reminder for the sisters, especially. Why? Because one of the great signs of weakness or strength of a community in their religion is with regards to the women and their holding fast to the religion. One of which is, at least what appears to people, is the attitude that she conducts herself with, meaning the hijab, for example. And the more you would find the sinful actions related to the hijab and things like this, that means these types of communities, the ummah is not in a good state. Because this is what appears. So when a person sees, things like this, then to be ready and to prepare oneself to be, even if you're a stranger among others, or people would look down upon you or make fun of you, or what they would say, why you're wearing things like this, and all of these things becomes irrelevant, because you have the yaqeen and the certainty and the rewards from Allah, and following what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. So all of that is because of the rewards are multiplied at times of ghafla. So the Prophet ﷺ would fast in the month of Sha'ban because of that. And Aisha radiallahu anha, she said, لم يكن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يصوم شهرا أكثر من شعبان فإنه كان يصوم شعبان كله. The Prophet ﷺ did not used to fast a month more than the month of Sha'ban, and he used to fast the entire month of Sha'ban. And some of the narrations, most of it except a very few days, that he won't, alayhi salatu wasalam. So whether is, as some of the ulama, they said, it's like the sunnah prayer before the fard. You pray dhuhr, and before dhuhr you pray sunnah prayer. 4 rak'ah sunnah and 2 rak'ah after. So this is like sunnah al-rawatib, the fasting in Sha'ban. Also, it's like the person might have missed some of the recommended fasting throughout the year. So this to make up these days also in the months of Sha'ban. تعظيما لرمضان, exalting Ramadan because it's closer to Ramadan. And the other reason, the Prophet ﷺ, he said this is a month where the deeds are elevated, ascends to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, presented to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the yearly deeds being presented, because it's every day that happens, and there's weekly, and there's a yearly one. So the yearly one is an important one. And that shows that everything that we do is witnessed and it's recorded, and people would either rewarded or punished as a result of this. As one of the early generations of Islam, he said, this is not a hadith, but one of the early generations of Islam, he said, رجب شهر الزرع وشعبان شهر السقي للزرع ورمضان شهر حصاد الزرع. A very deep meaning, because when people think of Ramadan, they think of the month where we put the effort in for the ibadah, and forgetfully overlooking the month of Rajab and the month of Sha'ban and so on. And oftentimes you would find a person is not really physically and heart-wise not in the state of the ibadah in Ramadan because they did not prepare themselves before that. So Ramadan is really the month of harvesting, not the month of planting the good. As this one early generation of Islam, he said, Rajab is the month where you plant you put your seeds. And the month of Sha'ban is where you make the suqi, or suqya, you water your plant. And then in Ramadan, you harvest. And then in Ramadan, hasadu zar. So this is the real joy is in the month of Ramadan. The real joy of the ibadah, the real joy of fasting. We want to have our fasting in Ramadan not a struggle that makes the person not devoted in their fasting, even though fasting is the rewards are given more when a person is going through patience. But is the fact to be able to enjoy spiritually these acts of worship, and the same thing for the night prayer when a person is not used to it. So to prepare oneself with the deeds to be done in this month. And that's why when the deeds also are presented to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the month of Sha'ban, what type of deeds we want for us to be presented to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Of course, with al-Islam, with al-Iman, with fulfilling the obligations, repenting to Allah. It's very important to repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this month. And fasting is the best of all actions when it comes to this month, when the last of the year of the deeds of the person have fasting in it. So that's more likely for the blessings of the entire year and the forgiveness of the sins to be from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that by itself also exalting the commands of Allah shows that the believers, they have certainty in the rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why also they used to give that name to the month of Sha'ban, Shahrul Qurra, the month of the reciters of the Quran. They recite the Quran a lot in the month of Sha'ban. Because this is again preparing themselves so that the month of Ramadan, when it starts, they're already having the continuity of reciting the Quran because they get used to it before in the month of Sha'ban and the months before. And that's why to practice these actions in the month of Sha'ban the way that a person wants them to be in the month of Ramadan. And that's why this is a month of purification, to purify ourselves, to the deeds or al-a'mal, we have to treat it like this is your one's capital in this life. This is what we earn in this life. So when you have earnings, you want to make sure that it's pure, it's clean. You eliminate all of the doubts. You would remove anything that might hinder you from having the best when it comes to your earnings. And that's why repentance, fulfilling the rights of others, being consistent in matters of goodness. So this is, reciting the Quran, fulfilling the commands of Allah. And one of which is, is very important, especially for the women, is to make the qada of the days that were missed in the previous month or the previous months, because of the days of whether it's menses, whether it's after birth, bleeding, or anything like this. So this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed upon the women. And Aisha radiallahu anha, as it's stated in the authentic hadith, that she would wait for the month of Sha'ban to make up for the days that she missed in Ramadan because of the right of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam upon her. So this is limakani, because that's what she said, limakani Rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, because of how close she was to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and she did not want to be less than fulfilling the rights of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. So she would take advantage of the fact that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam is fasting a lot in the month of Sha'ban, and she would fast and make up the days of what she missed in Ramadan. So this is an important thing to be reminded of. And it's not permissible to delay the making the qada of the days till the next Ramadan comes. So this is another important thing. Sometimes you would find people they did have days of Ramadan from previous years. That's not permissible without an excuse, of course. So before the next Ramadan comes, all the days that a person did not fast, they should make up these days if it was a temporary matter for them to break their fast in Ramadan. And when it comes to the pregnant woman and the one that is breastfeeding, if she was in need to break her fast by the fact that this is something that can affect her or can affect her child, then she make up the days and she feed a poor person with details. And to be very specific, as the ulama they say, that if the woman breaks her fast in Ramadan out of the fear for her child only, I mean her health is okay. It's out of the fear for her child, whether she is pregnant or breastfeeding. Then she needs to make up the day. And feeding a poor for every day, this is something that her husband would pay for, or the guardian of the child. Or she can do it, there's no harm. And this is what is best, and to be away from the differences of opinions. Right? And then for those who said that if she broke her fast in Ramadan out of the fear for her own self, right? So then in that case, she is sufficient for her to make up the days, right? To make up the days of fasting. But then if the next month of Ramadan comes in, and she did not make up the days yet, then there is the time, there is the feeding the poor. In this case, because the next Ramadan had entered. So this is basically what it's supposed to be done if she broke her fast because of the being pregnant or being breastfeeding. And sometimes it's 1 year pregnant, another year's breastfeeding. So there's so many days to be made up. In that case, that means the Ramadan's more than one Ramadan would enter and she did not finish all the days. So she should still count the days to make up. And then if one Ramadan passes, then she gives the fidya for every day, and that is sufficient one time. And that is what is sufficient for a poor person for a day, whether it's a meal or like 1 kilogram of something that is grains or something that can be saved, which is sufficient, inshallah ta'ala. But if she's able to make up the days before Ramadan, there's no fidya, and some said there's no fidya anyway, as long as she make up the days. As long as she make up the days, then this is sufficient also for her, inshallah ta'ala. So this is with regards to these ahkam, and to be warned against any innovations that is done in the month of Sha'ban that the Prophet ﷺ didn't do, one of which is these types of celebrations in the middle of Sha'ban, where the Prophet ﷺ, no report that he did anything in the middle of Sha'ban. There's a hadith where some of the ulama authenticated and some they didn't, which is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in Allah la yattali'u ila ahli al-ard, that he looks at the people of the earth in the night of the 15th of Sha'ban, فَيَغْفِرُ لِكُلِّ أَحَدٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives everyone except a mushrik and mushahid, or mushahid. A mushrik, someone associate partners with Allah, or someone that is in dispute or quarrelsome with another Muslim. But as far as special ibadah, special dhikr, special dua, all of that is bid'ah, innovation in the deen, that the best way is the way of the Prophet ﷺ. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept from all of us, inshallah, and to make us all witness the month of Ramadan, and to have the good intentions to have Ramadan the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with us. Barakallahu fikum. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله. بارك الله فيك.